Alright guys, you know how I love to bring you on my adventures and travels, and wanted to show you this awesome scene here. I love to bring you with me on these spots. I film and I show you these places, just all for the glory of God. God is good, you know. And guys, we're going to talk about a bunch of things that are going to happen in the sixth seal in this video, and I just love these things. So look at this. This place is amazing here, guys. I wish I could really express to you and show you all the beautiful things going on. It's marvelous. But you can see, I think right about here, if the video looks right, there's mountains, beautiful mountains in the background. But guys, many of you do not believe the interpretations and things I've submitted on this channel. And, you know, that's okay. What we're doing is we're watching. Now, what we're watching for is we're watching for the sixth seal. Now, as we watch for that, I'm going to go through all the major scriptures on the sixth seal, but there's some things I'm going to focus on in this message, which are the three major things that will physically manifest in the earth, physical manifestations in the earth of things that we can see in the sixth seal, okay? Now, some of them have already happened, and that is the solar eclipses and blood moons. We're going to go through that later. And I'm going to go inside and I'm going to have to go through the notes. I'm going to read you all the scriptures so you're fully educated. I'm doing all this to fully educate you to the best of my abilities, that you have as much information as possible on this critical event. Now, it may be the day of the Lord, sixth seal, but it certainly is the tribulation. It is not the great tribulation. Lord Jesus said, after the tribulation of those days, okay? Now, that's the time we find ourselves in right now, okay? But what we're going to talk about in this is the three major judgments that we are watching to see happen, guys. In conclusion, the three major judgments, guys, would be the stars falling from heaven, number one. Now, stars falling from heaven, the description is Sodom and Gomorrah. It's not just shooting stars in the sky, guys. These are meteors. These are things that we would anticipate physically impacting the earth. Now, this is already happening. Now, they're already, whatever they want to call it, it doesn't matter. The scriptures must be fulfilled, but there are meteors hitting the earth. There's a meteor that hit the earth in Australia. That was late September. Then there was a meteor that hit Russia, again, in October, about a month later, so mid to late October in Russia. These are major things we're watching for. The reason I'm drawing your attention is because they are happening. Now, they may increase in frequency, but that is number one. So number one is a physical manifestation on the earth, aside from the solar eclipses and blood moons, is the stars falling from heaven. Number two is the great earthquake. At the beginning of the sixth seal, there was a great earthquake. We are anticipating a great earthquake. And as we go through the scriptures, we may find these impacting specifically Babylon, okay? And number three, we have stars falling from heaven. We would have number three, the tsunami. There would be a tsunami. Again, the tsunami may also impact Babylon. And guys, Babylon, to be clear, is America. It is the West. So it's not just America. It may also be, European nations. Like, for example, all the earthquakes hitting Italy in close proximity. This, I'm not saying is the great earthquake, but this is the type of thing we're watching for. So we would expect these things to happen and escalate, okay? Hold on, there's some noise. I'm going to pause it. Okay, guys. So, sorry about that noise, but want to continue on here and talk about these three things real quick. And then we're going to go through all the scriptures, and we're going to look at Matthew, Mark, Luke, and Revelation, where it all talks about the sixth seal. Now, I also have my board. I'm going to show you this as well in this piece, guys. But the scriptures I want to also draw your attention to study. Many of you study. Those of you study, I encourage you to study all the scriptures. You'll see that they're all talking about the same thing. But Nahum chapter 1, and also Isaiah 13, and what was the other one? And also Haggai. Haggai chapter 2 as well. These all are giving descriptions, several descriptions that describe this day of the Lord. Okay? And this is what we're focusing on so that you understand the scriptures, and then we can look for the scriptures happening and actually being fulfilled, and looking at what would actually be these stars falling from heaven. What would be this great tsunami? What would be this great earthquake? What does it look like? What do the scriptures actually tell us about this? Okay, so that way we're not getting into any strange speculation or anything like that. We're following the scriptures very detailed. Now, when we look at Nahum chapter 1, guys, first and foremost, Nahum is certainly a judgment on Babylon. It says that in Nahum 1, but the other thing I want you to know about is Nahum chapter 3. In Nahum chapter 3, this is what it says. Babylon, the multitude of the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot, the mistress of witchcrafts. That's in Nahum chapter 3. So essentially the whole book is dealing with judgment on Babylon. Okay? Now, not only that, it tells us about the Son of Man coming in the clouds. So let's look at it. Nahum chapter 1, verse 3. The Lord is slow to anger, of great power, and will not acquit the wicked. The Lord had his way in the whirlwind and in the storm, and the clouds are the dust of his feet. So this is the sign of the Son of Man coming in the clouds, and the clouds at his feet. Okay? He rebukes the sea and makes it dry and dries up the rivers. And then let's go in verse 5. The mountains quake at him and the hills melt. Again, we have the earthquake right here. The earth is burned at his presence, and the world and all that dwell therein. That's what's happening right now. The earthquake, the volcanic activity, and the earth burning. Who can stand before his indignation, and who can abide in the fierceness of his anger? His fury is poured out like fire, and the rocks are thrown down by him. Now, the rocks thrown down by him, again, this is the stars falling from heaven, okay? So right here we have the stars falling from heaven. Earlier in Nahum chapter 1, we saw the earthquake. And then as we keep going, it says, verse 8, with an overrunning flood, he will make an other end of the place thereof. Okay, and there is the tsunami. So right here in Nahum chapter 1, guys, we have the earthquake. We have the stars falling from heaven. And we have the tsunami. It's all right there, okay? Now, it's also in other places. Certainly, we're going to read this later, but we also find this in all the descriptions where the stars fall from heaven. Okay, those are the meteors. There's many other scriptures I could give you on this, and if you want, I'm going to put together a notes and study piece on the sixth seal so you can see all the scriptures and to see the context of the scriptures and understand this, okay? But let's keep going here. Let's now talk about the tsunami. So then in Luke 21, it's the seas and the waves roaring. And there should be on the earth distress of nations and perplexity, the seas and waves roaring. So Lord Jesus said this. His words are so important. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but his words will not pass away. Luke 21, seas, waves roaring. This is the tsunami. And in Haggai 2:6, he will shake the heavens and the earth. And so when he shakes the earth, that is the earthquake. And he will shake the sea. Shaking the sea has to do with the tsunami. Okay? Now, let's see. Now, the other thing I want to mention here as well with the tsunami, we saw it in Nahum chapter 1, but also it could be in Daniel chapter 8, verse 11. It says, it talks about the little horn, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Now, the person here is Obama. So the place of his sanctuary being cast down may allude to a major U.S. city like Washington, D.C. or New York. We're watching for it, guys. But I'm just drawing your attention to all these scriptures to see what this will look like. Okay? Next, we have the earthquake. Revelation 6. At the opening of the sixth seal, there's a great earthquake, and the mountains were moved at him. Okay? Now, let's also talk about Isaiah 13, the burden of Babylon. Okay? And I encourage you to read all of these chapters, guys. For time's sake, I cannot read the whole chapter, but Isaiah 13, and as we get into it, let's see. Okay, let's look at, behold, the day of the Lord comes. And let's see. Okay. And they shall come from afar, from the one end of heaven to another, and howl in the day of the Lord is at hand. It shall come as destruction from the Almighty. Therefore shall all hands be faint, every man's heart will melt. This is just like what it said in Luke. They shall be afraid, pangs and sorrow shall take hold of them, and they shall be in pain as a woman that travails. And they shall be amazed. Behold, the day of the Lord comes, cruel and wrath and fierce anger, and to lay the land desolate, to destroy the sinners thereof. Now, watch this. The stars of heaven and the constellations shall not give their light. Okay, here we have the stars not giving their light. The sun shall be darkened, and it's going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. Again, these are eclipses, okay? I will punish the world for their iniquity, and I will cause the arrogance of the proud to cease, and I will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible. I will make a man more precious than gold, and every man than the gold of wedge of Ophir. Therefore will I shake the heavens and the earth, and shall remove out of her place in the wrath of the Lord of hosts in that day of his fierce anger. Okay, so here we have the shaking of the earth and the heavens. Okay, keeps talking about this. All right, now that is Isaiah 13. So clearly in Isaiah 13 we have these same descriptions of the solar eclipse, lunar eclipse, stars not giving their light. All of this is drawing our attention to the sixth seal. Okay, all right, so there we have it. We have the tsunami. We have the great earthquake. We also have the stars falling from heaven. All right. Now, the other thing I want to do is I want to take the time to read to you. We're just going to go right through it. Matthew, Mark, Luke, Revelation. And again, we're going to just read Revelation. Let's start with Matthew 24. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of the trumpet, and they shall gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to another. Learn the parable of the fig tree. All right, now let's also go to Mark 13 and read Mark's description of this same thing. In those days, that after that tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, the stars of heaven shall fall, the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. And he shall send his angels, and shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from the uttermost part of heaven to the uttermost part of heaven. Learn the parable of the fig tree. All right, now let's keep going. Luke 21 also describes this same thing, but he gives us a little bit more information. Okay? Men's hearts failing for fear, for looking at those things which are coming upon the earth, for the powers of the heaven shall be shaken. Actually, let me go back to verse 25. And there shall be signs in the sun, and the moon, and the stars, and on the earth, distress of nations, and perplexity, the sea and waves roaring. Men's hearts failing for fear, for the looking at the things that are coming on the earth, and for the powers of the heaven shall be shaken. Then shall they see the Son of Man coming in the cloud with power and great glory. Then shall these things, and when these things shall begin to pass, look up, lift up your heads, for your redemption draws nigh. And he spoke to them the parable. Behold the fig tree and all the trees. Later on, guys, I'm going to do a piece on the parable of the fig tree. But we're talking about the sixth seal. All the things I'm reading to you are clearly a description of the sixth seal. Revelation 6, verse 12. Behold, when he had opened the sixth seal, lo, there was a great earthquake. The sun became black as sackcloth is hair, and the moon became as blood. The stars fell unto the earth, as a fig tree casts her untimely figs when she is shaken with a mighty wind. And heaven departed as a scroll, as is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of her places. The kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the chief captains, the mighty men, the bondmen, every free man, hid themselves in the dens and the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and the rocks, Fall on us, hide us from the face of him that sits upon the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come. Who shall be able to stand? Now it keeps going. And after these things I saw the 4 angels standing in the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of heaven, that the wind should not blow in the earth, nor in the sea, nor any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea. Hurt not the earth and the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of God on their foreheads. Okay? So clearly there, guys, we have all this describing the same thing. Now I also want to take you over here and show you the board. Alright guys, here we have it again. Again, I'm going over the same thing over and over, but what we have here is we have the description from Matthew 24, and then we also have the description of Revelations chapters 6 and 7, all describing the 6th seal. Let's go over it real quick. I've said the same thing over and over in this piece, but the sun being darkened is the same as the sun being turned to black as sackcloth in Revelation. The moon not giving her light became as blood in Revelation 6. The stars shall fall from heaven, exact description in Matthew and Revelation. The tribes of the earth shall mourn. That's the same as the kings hid themselves in the dens and the rocks and the mountains. And he will gather the elect. This is the same as the seal of the servants on their foreheads. You have the 4 winds, which are the 4 angels which hold the 4 winds. And learn the parable of the fig tree. We saw the fig tree will cast forth its figs from an untimely wind. So guys, these points, I'm showing you all these scriptures and all these things over and over to get you to understand that clearly Matthew 24 and Revelation 6 are the same thing. And again, in conclusion to this message, we're watching for the earthquake, the tsunami, and the stars to fall from heaven. Those are the 3 things we're watching for, okay, guys? So, to Yeshua be all the praise and honor and glory, and keep watching, okay? We'll have some more soon.